hat. You don't have to. Okay. I mean, that's fine for me. Okay, we're good. Showtime, we're good. Oh, more chairs. All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started as the folks slowly matriculate in here and get the chair set up. Good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Heath Bowen. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Social Science here at St. Thomas Aquinas College, and I am privileged to welcome you to our 2024 signature Stac Chat with author, artist, activist Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah of Rockland County fame. No doubt he's taken the cool factor of Stac and brought it up to here by having him show up. Before I begin the formal introductions of the two folks here on center stage, I'd like to provide a few quick thank yous. First of all, to Richie Folco from Big Red Books over here at the table. Don't forget to purchase one or both of Nana's books before you leave, right there. Thank you for Richie for making the trip from Nyack. To the folks at the Career Center, especially Maureen and Denise, for your support. To the wonderful workers from Aramark, Facilities, IT, and Communication Arts, students and faculty, for making this physically and digitally possible. To Dr. Stacy Sewell for all the work, much of it thankless, for facilitating and overseeing our undergraduate education program at the Sullivan Correctional Facility, a men's maximum security prison, and a branch campus of ours, and her unwavering support of our students and graduates in that facility. And to my assistant, Caitlin, for being so amazing, for urging me to finish Chain Gang All-Stars so we can talk about the ending, which I fortunately did at 2 a.m. this morning. No doubt about it. And importantly, for all your help in organizing today's event. And a special thanks to my friend and colleague, Dr. Stacy Schultz, for enthusiastically agreeing to moderate a discussion today with Nana. Dr. Stacy Schultz is an associate professor of English and director of the writing program. She teaches a variety of courses from Lit and Gender to African American Lit to the first year seminar. She also teaches at the Sullivan County Correctional Facility. She has been working on a book. You're still working on that, right? Okay, good. Tentatively titled, This Woman's Work, Rereading, Rewatching, and Rewriting The Handmaid's Tale for several years now, and hopes that Nana will reveal that it took him many years to finish his books as well. And finally, a very special thanks to Nana, who we are grateful to have in our presence today. For those of you who don't know, Nana was raised in Spring Valley, New York, now lives in the Bronx. His debut collection, Friday Black, was a New York Times bestseller, won the Penn Gene Stein Book Award and the William Saroyan International Prize for Writing, and was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle's John Leonard Award and the Dylan Thomas Prize. His first novel, Chain Gang All-Stars, was a finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction, shortlisted for the Waterstones Debut Fiction Prize, and the Books Are My Bag Awards, and selected as a New York Times Top 10 Books of the Year. Adjei-Brenyah is a National Book Foundation's 5 Under 35 honoree. Thank you, Nana, and now I will turn it over to you, Stacy.
Thank you so much. That was nice. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, first of all, for coming out tonight. We are thrilled to see the turnout and are just thrilled to have you here with us and to be able to talk to us about a number of things. So I think probably the obvious question, given where we are right now, is that as Heath mentioned, you grew up in Spring Valley. And so I wonder, talking to, especially a Rockland crowd, even if they're just Rockland because they're college students in Rockland, but can you tell us about your experiences growing up in Spring Valley and Rockland County, maybe more generally, and then maybe we can start to talk about how those experiences influence your writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I start, thank y'all for coming here. I don't know if it was compulsory from your teachers or something, but even if it was, I feel really grateful to share this space with y'all. Um, every time I'm in a room and it's like this, I'm like, is there like someone cooler coming like 20 minutes after we're done, or
It's you. It's really
uh,
you.
it's really kind of y'all to be here today. But yeah, I'm from Spring Valley, Rockland County. I try to say that a lot because it's true, and also I think coming from where I'm coming from, there's people from Spring Valley here. Is there? I see you. I see my people already. Um, it's easy to feel like you like are not in like the main thing or something. Especially, I think all of us being so close to New York City. I happen to be born in New York City, but I like to say I'm from Spring Valley, Rockland County. Is where I went to school for real. Um, and what's special about that place in particular is it's insanely diverse in many by many sort of paradigms. Like there's a lot of like ethnic diversity, there's a lot of like sort of socioeconomic diversity that I have experienced myself just by swinging up and down in different ways. And I think in a lot of times, I went to Rampa High School. There's also Spring Valley High School, our sister school. Several smaller schools leading up to that. Uh, I think the story in the context of Rockland is like usually like some like horror story slash some like sad story about how we didn't have this, we don't have that, blah blah blah. And that is true, and it's not by accident. It's people of color being exploited specifically, and systematically. But I think part of what is important about that is that we learn how to make a lot with a little, and we also, like I said, like we know what it is to be among like just the sort of absolute cacophony of ethnic differences, and so people from where I'm from, I feel as though we feel comfortable in a lot of different rooms because we get to be exposed to so much. I got friends from probably every continent before I, ever left Rockland, even though Rockland might feel really small and really separate from everything else. And in terms of my writing, if I should go there, like I said, Rockland is interesting politically in a lot of ways, and then Spring Valley within Rockland is also interesting. Uh, my particular high school, the East Ramapo Central School District, is often embattled in like sort of this political conversation. And so to go to that school and be a little bit aware, I was probably 16 the first time we were like protesting or advocating for ourselves. And so I think by being in that school, I sort of learned naturally that there are sort of systemic issues at hand that are keeping you from thriving in the way that you might. And so I think just by the fact of going to this, like I was lobbying probably at the age of 20 in Albany because I went to college, we came back, we did lobbying, and something that felt interesting to me because we knew that there was legislation that could potentially improve our situation. And I was already thinking about that at a pretty young age because of the space I was in. And so I think that's a huge part of it, realizing that problems that seem to be just yours might actually be systemic. I think the big shift I actually had as an artist, as a writer, is I think a lot of us have like sad things happen to us. A lot of us, especially if you're a writer, there's probably some wound there. There's some like hurt. Not to like, shout us all out, but that's probably there somewhere. And it's important to like, everyone's own pain is really important and that's real. I think for me though, it also became really important to add, okay, I'm sad. I feel particularly sad about, let's say, this mental health issue of someone in my family, or this sort of socioeconomic situation we're in, or this housing instability. and it feels very like woe is me, just me. It's like the secret hatred I'm feeling for a situation. And a shift happens where you realize, oh, this problem that feels like it's just you is actually systemic. It's actually something sort of built in to sort of the fabric of the space you're in. And there's like sort of powers that be that are benefiting from you being a little bit or a lot disenfranchised. And it goes from that sort of woe was me to like woe was us to like, which creates a sort of kind of unity. And my work did that too. My work started to think, okay, these are issues that I care about that shape my life. But then after a while, I started to look out, like, wait, that person's suffering the way I am, and that person might be too. And eventually, you start realizing a lot of us are under the same sort of foot, getting squeezed, and that felt like a more useful place to work from as an artist.
So it sounds like for you, pretty early on, systems became pretty visible in ways maybe they weren't for other people, and that growing up in Rockland County, that was part of it. Those systems became more visible to you earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I'm the child of immigrants. Both my parents are from Ghana. My father, when he was alive, was a criminal defense attorney. So I'm also like have a particular exposure in that sense too, that I can see the rules and the law are malleable. You could bend them, you could play with them, you could change them, because I saw them directly with my father. So that also, I think, gave me access to some of those ideas. But yeah, so being in Rockland definitely gave me sort of a perspective on sort of things at a both intimate, personal level, but then also in the systemic level, just because where I'm from within the context of Rockland is often like embattled or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. So if we think about, it sounds like, you kind of go from the individual to then realizing other people are experiencing this. And so does that sort of become a community? And then does the writing, you deciding to write and to be an artist, does that extend the community then? Is that a way to extend community in some way?
Yeah, I hope it is. I hope it's a way to extend community. I think it's also just sometimes naming a thing. Sometimes it's like a lot of my work, I try not to be so reductive that there's some obvious like villain, a bad guy. Usually the villain is like this systemic presence, which is a collective of many things. But it's also kind of like a mindset or ignorance or unwillingness to, and that is to say, I try to have a lot of generosity for even the one who's doing harm, which I was obviously at the crux of this book, but kind of all my work, because most times the person who is doing harm is suffering on some level themselves. And the way that they come to sort of growing from that or like trying to change their situation ends up being ill-advised or less than compassionate. But I try to keep train my eye on through sort of invisible administrators who are making really important decisions that maybe we don't get anything to say anything directly about. And I could talk a lot about that in the context of so many places.
I wonder, in one of your interviews, you had said that you felt that as a writer, part of what your job was to do was to remind us that we can all be a little bit more compassionate. And I wonder if that's also some of what you are doing in this writing. And when you say that even the villains or the antagonists, it's not always clear, those are complicated figures, or maybe you have compassion toward those. Do you find that that's one of the things that fuels your writing, is the desire to remind us that we need to be more compassionate?
Yeah, I think it's the primary fuel.
Okay, so that's the fuel.
I think it's like my project as a writer. And it's personal compassion as well. It's like generosity and compassion, growing that. It's weird if you actually read my work, because it was like, for someone who loves compassion, it's like a lot of people getting stabbed, I guess.
Right.
a lot of decapitations for compassionate. Anyway, but I think I like to also not run away or shy away from the very real harm that's happening all the time, all around us, everywhere. There's a lot of people being really, truly, metaphorically or literally stepped on. And to me, to say something honest about that, I have to also say that part too. Because if I were to just act like, yeah, compassion, everything's happy, like this like sort of Care Bears type of thing, it's I don't think Care Bears is even a thing anymore. Then I was gonna say Teletubbies, which is also not a thing. What's the Bluey?
I don't even know, right?
Everything is not Bluey. Is that resonating for y'all? Yeah, thank you. Um, Care Bears was like a cartoon. These bears had like these like images on their stomachs, and they could
Do
like.
you all know the Care Bears?
They don't know the Care
Oh,
Bears.
I see a lot of nodding.
Y'all don't know the Care Bears.
Yeah,
You
all
weren't
right,
there.
that's right.
How do y'all know the Care Bears? How would they know the Care
You
Bears?
can't shame them for not being there.
But I can. Watch.
I don't think you can.
No, it's okay. I guess they know the Care Bears. But anyways, life is like not like that. Which insert very compassionate, lovey cartoon. Life is not that. And so to like sort of argue for compassion in the absence of the reality just would feel like a lie. And so for me, it's really important to argue for compassion sort of in spite or despite all the harshness that's all around us.
So I wonder too. There's last week we gave a talk about the sort of importance of the humanities, and I think it's fair to say that the humanities have been under attack for a while, and there's a lot of schools that are scrambling to try to figure out what they're doing with their humanities programs, with their philosophy, their religious studies, their English, their languages, right? And really trying to figure out, do we have a place in the world anymore? And so I listened to you talk about, your job as a writer, your primary job is to remind us of compassion. And I've read these quotes about how important STEM is, and absolutely right, but also that alongside STEM, you need the humanities, and in part, you need them because we need storytellers, and that we need to keep telling stories. And so do you find that that is also part of this too, like the compassion is part of the storytelling, is part of this larger humanities endeavor, or do you tie it to humanities?
I have to. Like, I think anyone who does the writing, and I mean, this makes me want to segue to, I don't know if it's going to be controversial if I talk about Angela Davis in any context. I'll talk about for me. This is Nana for a second, but I'll get there. I'll get there in a second. To me, I don't have any doubt that we can build a taller skyscraper. I don't have any doubt that we can build a stronger, faster rocket or train or whatever, a faster car. I don't have any doubt that we can like cure cancer. But I do have doubts because it's like evidence-based that we'll do those things and apply them in a way that like helps people, that is not rooted primarily in achieving profit. I think that we talk about like innovation and growth, and it's almost like this idea that if we just got a little bit more technologically advanced, we'd finally be comfortable enough to help each other. We'd finally be comfortable enough to save each other. We'd finally be comfortable enough to escape the sort of dread that is the human experience. That is a part of the human experience, and we'd be able to like sort of disappear suffering. But I think it's like the good news is like you came a long way. The bad news is you went the wrong way. It's like a line from J. Cole. I think it's gonna be the epigraph for my next book, and I think that's where we are. Like we can even with the AI, people have this, and AI is many things at once. But if large language learning models is one part of it. I don't doubt that we can grow a supercomputer that can feel human. But my thing is like, but so what? But for what? We have a lot of great technology right now, but people suffer the same. We have the ability to end food insecurity, but we don't, right? We have the ability to probably end housing insecurity, but we don't. We have individuals who are worth billions of dollars right now, and some people are worth nothing. Why? So we have there's this massive inequity because we are looking for like something outside ourselves to be like the philosopher's stone, the thing that changes everything. And I don't think we're going to find it. I don't think it matters how tall the skyscraper is. I don't think it matters if we had a machine that if you step on it, all your elements are fixed. I think that until you decide that human life and life in general is the most sacred thing and kind of not focus on wealth making and on this idea that I'm bigger or better than you, until you get to the place where you essentially, not to be too foo-foo magic about it, eliminate the distinction between you and me, it's all going to end up rolling back into people finding ways to make even this advancement in technology a way to create sort of stratifications in personhood. I'm the one who has the healing box, and you don't have the healing box. So, like, I'm a high-class person, you're not. And again, I say this obviously coming from living in America, which is the top of the place that if there should be no suffering, we're the ones who shouldn't have it. But if you look outside, there are tons of people suffering all the time. There's tons of people who have nothing, when a lot of people have everything. And what I was going to say with the humanities, the reason I brought that up, so the way I heard about that, I was doing school stuff, and I work with a group called the Rockland Coalition to End the New Jim Crow. They work a lot with advocacy for people who have been in prison, but we end up doing a lot of work for the East Ramapo Central School District as well. I heard from organizers in NIAC that kids in North Rockland had gotten Angela Davis to come to Rockland County. People here know who Angela Davis is, I hope. If you don't, you've heard of Martin Luther King, right? Angela Davis is probably the living analog to Martin Luther King, I would say. Probably our greatest living civil rights activist, right? So right? Yeah. So it's just the true thing. Angela Davis, and again, I don't know the full facts of it. I know what I've read in the news and what people have told me. So again, this is not a talking, not anybody else. And I'm saying this in context of like the humanities piece, though. And also because yesterday, I was at an event where both Roxanne Gay and Nicole Hannah Jones.
Oh, I just saw her. Yeah, I just saw her a couple weeks ago. She was in NIAC. Yeah.
Yeah, and she gave a speech that was about what you say, what you mean, and what you do being in alignment. Anyways, so Angela Davis, who is maybe our most important living civil rights activist, has been subject to so much violence because her advocacy for Black people, for those who have been incarcerated, those who have LS. She's dedicated her entire life to this. Dr. Davis is an icon in the field, absolutely 100%, and analogous, without like sort of hyperbole, to Martin Luther King, right? Just like, if you could accept it or not, but if you know anything what I'm talking about, that's true. But I guess she's also a radical in some mind, as is Martin Luther King. Again, we have this sort of attitude now, we sort of water him down into sort of like, oh, I just have a dream. But Martin Luther King is a radical by any standard that we might have had now. And anyone who makes a difference is. And so, in the humanities thing, I'm just saying, I'm thinking about it now because you sort of put it into the context of the institution, which I'm always thinking of. And I think it's just useful to say this one here because it applies to here. Again, from the story I'm hearing, some people decide that it's a bad thing that Angela Davis is coming to the community. And she's actually going to get hosted here at St. Thomas Aquinas College, Stac. People get upset. When I tell you, like, who is she? She's someone who's advocated her whole life for equal rights. It becomes decided that she's too radical. And then the school decides to say, like, they cancel the event here. And that's a way of thinking about that is to say, you've now like denied these kids to basically see the equivalent of Martin Luther King in person. And again, there's a lot of complicated like aspects, and who knows the administrative body that's in that invisible hand of the administrative body that decides things, because the school also has to work in sort of these confines of things that serve things other than the true humanitarian sort of goals of a college. But Angela Davis is now forced to go in the church and in the community, and she does her thing, and it's great, cool. But what is so crazy to me about these things, and why, and I absolutely do care about it, is, and I was talking just a second about how some prisons I'm not maybe going to be allowed to go in because of things I write about. Angela Davis, on my best day, I am like 1/4 of her. But I very much would aspire on my best day to be, like I said, 1/4 of her. But I'm here right now. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm here today at St. Thomas Aquinas College. I thanked her in my book, and I think it's a really important, because of that, what you say, what you mean, what you do, thing that's ringing in my head, is important for me to say this. I think that it's really easy for these administrative bodies to move towards not only like fear, but also like denying the humanities, denying that real thing that we're trying to do by being afraid and basically folding to hatefulness. Let's call it what it is. And so that's what happened. And so I think for me, to be a writer who literally acknowledged Angela Davis in this book, and then to also be in the same space where she was very recently denied the ability to speak. It's important for for students in the community to be like, okay, how does the schools? What does it say? What does it do? What does it mean? And what does it actually do? How are those things in alignment? How are they not? And I can say off the bat, even me just being here, somehow slipping past the ciphers, like somehow something isn't out of analog because of probably the great people in your department, just like doing your thing. But I think it's just important for me to like note that and just to think about what has happened there. And for y'all to know that has happened, and for that not to just be swept away somewhere. The greatest living civil rights activist is denied the right to speak at a university with a humanitarian department, and it's due to whatever the admin said. It's an act of administrative cowardice and fear, and it's not the end of the world, though, because you guys can know that, and like, how can you move past that? How can you grow past it? And I also have to say that, again, if everything Angela Davis is, I pray to be. I'm not. I can't, but I wish I was, and I try to be. I just want to make that super clear. That's how I think about the humanities and all that goes with it.
Well, and I think too, this when we talk about storytelling, and I know you did a meet and greet before this, and you talked about what it means to write and staring down the thing that you're afraid of. And I think so often, we are trying to grapple with fear. And the humanities, I think, sometimes part of that is wrestling with the things we're afraid of. Absolutely. And finding voice to articulate the things that we're afraid of. Do you see like fear? Does that motivate what you write? Like, do you sit down and do you think, okay, I want to look some truths in the face. I think about my memoir students, my students who are taking American autobiography this semester, and we're always talking about truths and plural, right? Like that you have to know that when you're thinking about truth, that there's going to be other versions of truth, and I don't mean in the ways that we're talking now about the disinformation or misinformation. I mean, certainly we should think about those kinds of things, and the humanities have a role in that when we're being critical about the messages that we're getting sent. But I think also just to say, what truth are you trying to kind of get at, and know that your truth is probably going to be different from somebody else's. Yeah. And a lot of that comes in with this sort of, what are you afraid of? Like, what are the things that you're kind of fearful of, and do you need to think about or write about that? Is that something you think about?
Yes. Imagine, that's all yes. No, I'm terrified. Again, I think
Like always, all the time?
Always, all the time.
Okay.
If you look at the world, it's very terrifying. There's a lot of terrifying things. I happen to live in the empire that does most of the destruction, so maybe I don't have to be terrified the same way as others are, but that's still something to be terrified of too. I think that a big part of being a writer, choosing to write, is like you feel compelled to go towards what you fear. I think it's a good process just in life, going towards difficult things. I think about those who climb mountains, literally, what's compelling them is to do the hard, difficult thing. Mm-hmm. I think in the example I was giving before, I know what happened. People with a lot of money said this will be consequential, and people got afraid, and they said something, and they did something. Of course, and even myself, when I say things that a lot of the work I write, especially in the time now, you could get in trouble or something. Either way, from the people who align with me and the people who don't.
And you can get banned, right? I think we could talk about the prisons maybe not allowing
banned,
your book in there,
banned / canceled / whatever. Mm-hmm. It could all happen, but to me, I'm the kind of person when I'm in class and it's too quiet, I raise my hand because I can't just sit there and that. I don't like that feeling. And in general, if I'm afraid of something, I'm going to try to do. I'm going to push towards it because I don't want fear to be the thing that defines me in my personal life or my external life or any part of my life. I don't want fear to be sort of my North Star, because I think that is what happens when fear is your North Star. You can get really easily co-opted into being hateful, into violence, into being someone who harms others, and I think the systems really depend on that. Like this book, it thinks a lot of. So what am I afraid of? But I'm afraid of like the parts of that I've been too far indoctrinated to ever see it. I'm afraid of the idea that I might stop caring. I'm afraid that when I'm in opportunity to say something difficult and I feel like there might be blowback against me, I won't say it. I'm afraid of like
not seeing the systems.
yeah,
like not being able to understand or see the systems. Is
yeah.
that fear?
I'm afraid of being I'm afraid of being someone who's just in the mall trampling people. You know, I don't want to be that kind of person. But I'm also afraid of regular things. I'm afraid of the loss. I also am afraid of the systems. Like I write a lot about capitalism, consumer capitalism, and like sort of the consumer capitalistic fervor that defines so much of our lives because it has defined so much of my life. And I'm afraid of, and we have a system that is really, it's like a self-cleaning oven. It's really good at, like the prize for, or like the punishment for unsuccessful participation in consumer capitalism is basically death or prison, because we've criminalized and individualized the issue of poverty, which is systemic. So the prison system serves a very important purpose. It means like you better run on the treadmill. Like if you know, if being an active member of the, I don't know if you ever read Bartleby the Scrivener, like I prefer not to. You can't prefer not to. You have to just keep running. Now you got me on like this trip. Everything is great too. Everything is fine. Don't worry, it's fine. But everything is okay. But also, you're perpetually running on a hamster wheel to feed the machine called consumer capitalism. And if you don't, you'll die. And I'm afraid of that too. Yeah. Because again, I've had those times where I'm like, okay, my security is at risk. The electricity is turned off. Okay, we're evicted. Now everything I had, I don't have anymore. But the thing that also is good, besides all the therapy I have to do now, but the good part is I can see it. Yeah. I can see how easy they can take that thing away from you. That thing that you thought was everything. Oh, you thought your whole life depended on the GameCube and you get to play a game. Well, they turn the lights off. So now what? Yeah. And once you get past some of those sort of more material like definitions of your life, you start getting you have an opportunity to see some of the more real things, and a lot of it comes back to just like that compassion for me. A lot of it compares to like keeping life sacred. A lot of it compares to like something real, like the real connection. And it's not something they can sell, but they really depend on you thinking you can buy it in a store, in the K Diamonds, in wherever they sell a Tickle Me Elmo, in a GameStop, on Amazon. They really depend on you thinking that you can buy love in some store. You can't, but we've trained ourselves. So I'm afraid of those things, like because I'm in it too. I'm not coming from some hill. I'm also a part of those things too. But I'm afraid of how pervasive those systems are.
Sure. Can we get back to the decapitations
yes.
for just a minute? There's no real smooth segue to that, except that
was pretty smooth.
As you talked about, right? You know how you're talking about compassion and how are you talking about sort of these really positive things. I'm struck by the love that's in your books, because a lot of times it is alongside some deep violence. But my question really for you is, do you watch fighting? How do you choreograph a fight scene? Because you have very detailed, sophisticated fight scenes. How do you write those?
Yeah, it's a funny thing because I'm glad you said fight scenes instead of like sort of like the horror stuff, because I'm actually not like a horror person or like gore. I've never watched like I've never watched like what do you call them? The Saw movies on purpose.
Okay, so you're not watching horror films.
And I love a show called Attack on Titan, but I struggle to watch it because I'm like, people getting crushed. It has giants and people get hurt bad or destroyed. But in terms of like, do I watch fights? I do. I watch a lot of kung fu movies, but I'm like a manga anime person. I grew up on like when you had to like go on like some weird parts of the internet to get the anime that was subbed wrong. Yes. They don't know what they have now. They go to Hulu when it's there like the day it came out. We had to wait like a week, and then if you couldn't get it anyways.
Mhm.
But but besides just the fact of the choreography and fights, for me, what was cool about coming up with those things in terms of like, I'm thinking about anime now, but some of the other media I like, is that you, and not to say that a Western or American stuff doesn't do this, but I think it does it much less. I think in America, a lot of times the payoff is like just that you shot the guy in the bad guy in the head.
Yeah.
I liked that because I was so like into the anime stuff. I learned that like really high action and really high philosophical debate can happen like in the same breath, in the same moment, in the same like time. And so I didn't have this idea where like this sort of like more like John Wick style, just shoot everybody. It's like that is the thing. No disrespect to Keanu Reeves. I know that's everybody's baby. Like he's cool, but I at some point like after you kill like guy 800, like have you become the villain yet? But I think those like the central conceit of those kind of movies is that like everybody but him and the people with speaking lines aren't really human beings. Because I don't think we would hold like if we knew the story of every single one of those like nameless people he just shoots in the head, it'd feel like a different movie. So I try. I'm like, nah. I started talking about Keanu Reeves. I forgot like the track I was on. Like, so more about Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
No.
So thinking, I mean, in those things, like knowing that, I think part of what's so interesting about your fight scenes is because
Oh, yeah.
you bring in that compassion and we see how complex both people are in the fight scene.
For me, the fight scene is never just about the spectacle of the fight itself.
Okay.
But I also do, that said, really care about hyper precisely representing in text the action of a fight because it's just a kind of a flex that I know a lot of people can't do, and I find it fun.
But how do you get there?
For
Because
me-
I can't do that.
for
I can't
me-
write that scene.
For me, it's about paying really. It's first off, it's about like taking a movement and breaking it down to like it's like parts and retroactively like representing that. So a good example might be like in like yoga. So like if you ever done yoga, a yoga instructor doesn't. They might say the name of the thing. They might say downward facing dog, but they also might say like you'll have your feet hip length apart. You'll hinge at your hips. Your palms will be in the ground. Your fingers will be spread. And then like, and they'll say like you'll paddle your feet one and the other. And if you, even without them saying downward facing dog, you will have created that movement in your, and if you're precise enough, you'll have arrived at that movement in your mind's eye because they broke, everything is component parts. So what's a punch really? A punch, you could say she threw a punch, he threw a punch, or you could say, Thrower planted her left foot with the force of blah, blah, blah. Her hips, which were angled, became centered as they drew her shoulder forward and her fist clenched softly then tightly. And as you know, her shoulder shot forward for power, and then in the last moment, her elbow extended as her knuckles blah blah. You know what I'm saying? That's also a punch, but in the like breaking down in people's minds, there's a punch, kick, whatever. But if I get into the intimate details of a movement, similar to like the yoga instructor, I can like make it. First off, because of the way reading works and the linear nature of it, I can sort of make this cool effect where it's almost slow motion, but like arriving all at once. And I can also fit the specificity. I mean, this is kind of getting like really into the weeds with it, but like the specificity of the language I use, every verb offers me opportunity to be like subtly even more specific. Because I can say her shoulder like whipped forward, or her shoulder like pressed forward, I'm really big on like verb choice and dynamic verbs, and so like
It's all about the verbs, people. I've been trying to tell you this for years now. It's all about the verbs,
it
right?
changes everything. If you can pay attention to your verbs, because if someone walks down the room, I mean, you can also overdo it. Like if you say like if every time someone instead of walk, you say they sashayed down the room, it becomes too much. But once in a while, that's great. But it speaks to something if you can be really, really precise. And so that doing those things also offers me the opportunity to be really precise in the language. I think that also makes it a cumulative effect of the fight feeling like really, really well rendered, hopefully, in other people's opinion.
Definitely, and I think that I was really struck by that, and again, kind of wondering, like, how do you even begin to like I said, to sort of write or choreograph these scenes? All right, so you've mentioned that you watch anime, that some of these things that you watch and maybe inspire you. So, if I were to ask you today, what are you watching?
Yeah, it's always like challenging, like top 5 or whatever, or like just in general.
Yeah, just general. You can say just, or if you can name it if you want. Like, what show are you watching right now? What are you binging?
I'm not watching. I'm a bad binger. I'm one of those people. It's hard for me to watch like too many shows in a row. I get like headaches.
You got to get up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm watching the show Shogun. It's not an anime.
Okay.
Shogun's on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I go to anime stuff, I'm not caught up on a lot of things, so I'm watching them very slow and like here and there. My Hero Academia. One's called My Hero Academia. I
There's
think
some nodding back there.
yeah, I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a super. I'm gonna name mainstream stuff. Don't judge me. Like,
This is a safe zone.
like I said, I think Attack on Titan is one of the best. It's called Attack on Titan, and I think it's one of the best shows like ever made. But it's like it makes me like sad, so I take my time with it. Full Metal's probably my favorite. Brotherhood, my favorite.
Yep.
I saw some knowing nods there. They're on the same type of time as me. What else am I watching? This is again very not anime. I'm watching The Sopranos for the first time.
Oh, look at that.
It's my whole personality now.
Yes.
I got pinky rings on. Okay. I'm like, no, it's really bad. I was in I was in New Orleans for some book festival, and I was telling my girl, I was telling her how we got to talk to like the owner of some bookstore, and it was really productive. And I said, yeah, when I go to places, I gotta talk to the boss. I was like, from now on,
This is who you are now.
it's so bad. I'm like, I've just become this other person. I was like, yeah, nowadays, it's just much easier. Take me to the boss. And I heard myself like, what are you talking about? I'm like talking about when I go to bookstores, I want to meet the owner.
Yeah.
But somehow, because I'm interested in maybe doing a bookstore one day, so but somehow it came out Bobby Serrato or something, Tony Soprano. Yeah. Anyways, I'm watching that for the first time. It's become my personality.
It's become a part of you now.
My whole personality.
Okay, this is good. This is good for us to know. All right, so what are you reading?
What am I reading right now? I try not to read too many things at once, but I can name some books that I think are great that I've read recently. I'm reading right now The Bee Sting by Paul Murray.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Have you heard of this? Oh, man, it's these messy Irish people, and I'm so into it. I'm like, I love the lives of this Irish family. Okay. That's a really good one. The Bee Sting, it's a big ass book like this. Yeah. But I'm really enjoying it. It's reminding me just how almost simple messiness is very engaging if you write it well enough. He did his thing. Come and Get It by Kylie Reed is a book that came out recently that I think I only just started. I think it's really great. I just gave this book to someone that I read a while ago, but I'm just going to plug it here because I think it's good. Carmen Maria Machado's short stories.
We have some serious fans out here. I'm teaching in the Dream House as part of my autobiography course, and I teach it. Every chance I get, I try to teach her. So
I was talking about her body at other parties, but she's one of the best.
Yes. We have some fans in here and quite a few students.
And she's really cool in real life.
Yes.
Really
I would love
super dope, super cool person. So that's some stuff.
What about movies?
What movies have I seen? I just saw Dune, everybody else.
And?
I'm a fan.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. I could talk specifically about some things, and I'm also already afraid of the thing that happens a lot where people watch and read things and get the exact opposite effect of what the intention of the writer was. I think people are going to view Paul Atreides Paul Atreides, and it's a really... maybe it'll become more obvious, I'm not saying it's not more nuanced than this. I'm not trying to. Is this a spoiler to talk about? I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about this. Dune is an old book, and a lot of it's a warning for making anyone a messiah. A lot of it's a warning against. I mean, that's clearly in the movies, but some people just miss things like that. I once. It's part of why there's footnotes in my book. I once was with someone. They said they liked Squid Game. Remember Squid Game? And then I was like, oh, great, this is my time to talk about anti-capitalism stuff, which is my bag. And they were like, why are you talking about that? And I was like, oh, because Squid Game. And they were like, what? And they had watched the whole Squid Game and never thought about capitalism once.
Oh, I feel like that might be a fail. Okay, yeah, okay.
But you'd be surprised. But that's the problem about employing violence. Violence is really compelling, and there's especially in our tradition in America, we're so trained to just take in violence for violence sake. sometimes reflect the choreography of it,
Yeah.
or the spectacle of it. A lot of times people think that is the point.
Yes. Yes.
Like I said, at some point there is.
It often, would you say it often is?
It really often is, and again, like not to reduce it, and not to like. This is just the example that's in my head.
Yeah.
But in John Wick, it maybe started off as like kind of like a vengeance-y payback. Like it's a revenge fantasy, I guess. But 4 movies in, it's about how cool can we make it seem that this guy's shooting people. That's what it's about. And because that we have a tradition of that, a tradition of empty violence, some people will miss fruitful violence if it's not really tailored right. I met the guy who made what's the movie where on a certain day, Purge? The guy who made the Purge was trying to like am I not to talk, whatever. He was trying to like acquire this at one point for like adaptation. And he talked to me a lot about how there's a whole bunch of people who view the Purge like non-ironically as like a thing that they think is a good idea. And he's very aware of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And like it's not surprising in this world, but yeah, that's a thing. And so, anyways, everything's great. It's fine.
Okay, I have a million more questions, but I also need to be able to turn it over to other people who also have questions for you. So Heath, can we go ahead and do that? Okay, all right. So I will walk over to you with my microphone. I already see a hand up.
Right away.
All
I love
right,
that.
yeah, and then
I love when there's a hand quick, because I tell you,
I know.
universally, there's like a pause and no one puts up their hand, because everyone's afraid to be the first person, and like anywhere I go, all over the world, and then someone raises their hand, and then everyone raises their hand. So I'm always like, those people who just raise their hand, like, wow, you're just like a special, groundbreaking person, because I'm that person too now, just to save time. Sorry.
It's all good. So who's your favorite Care Bear? No, I'm playing.
I was like the lightning one.
You spoke a lot about people missing the point. Is that something you're scared of in your own books? And is there a way for you to, I don't know, make a footnote like, please do not idolize this person?
Well, so hopefully, I mean, literally, there's footnotes in my book where like it's impossible to think the book is just about violence. Like it's pretty clear that I'm talking about the prison industrial complex in Chain Gang All Stars, which some people might find that like to be like didactic and like dumb, but like I've argued on the internet with people who watch Succession, and they're like, oh, I want Kendall to be the winner. I want so-and-so. And I'm like, you don't get the show. You don't get it. And they're arguing like, no, we can take it however we want. I'm like, no, you can't. You can, but you can't. Like the show is specifically doing something. Again, it's doing a great job of also humanizing these people, but it's also like making you feel afraid and sad and satirizing sort of like the super wealthy. Like that is what it is. And so for you to be if your primary investment in the show is who wins this game that leads to all the rest of us dying anyways, that's dumb to me. But go off if that's your thing. So yeah, I tried my best. I think you also though, to be honest, on some level, like that is hopefully just in the execution of the art itself. I don't think most people watched Squid Game and didn't get it. But it's just scary that that's possible. But there's a lot of examples of people getting the exact opposite thing. Like the Robert Frost poem is like the big example that people go. Like a lot of times people get the exact opposite. Succession is an example. Fight Club is an example. Like Fight Club's about toxic masculinity. People don't get it. And like some people are like, you could take whatever you want. I'm like, no, you can't. It's about you're getting the diametrically opposed to what, and I don't know. But anyways, great question.
Thank you.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey, great suit.
Thank you. How long did it take you to finish Chain Gang from start to finish?
So from start to, I'm going to say a number. I don't want people to be like alarmed. From the first day I wrote something in like Word that had the title Chain Gang All Stars was in May of 2015. It came out in some month in 2015. It came out in May of 2023. So 7-ish years, because I had like a year of like editing and marketing, or pre-planned, like, you know, the book is done, but it's not out yet.
Yep.
So about 7 years, but a lot of life happened. I had a whole other book come out. I graduated from grad school. My dad died. Like a lot of things were happening. So like it was during pandemic the last 2 years. I like really had like a chance to fully lock in. So, but I was about halfway done prior to that. So 7 years, but 7 years from when I first ideated it to when it came out. in terms of like, I don't know how to compute that into like hours or,
No, you're
do
fine. I
harsh years.
understand. I'm
But
already.
7-ish years is what I would say.
Um, sorry. Yes. What's your process like?
It can be really erratic and crazy. I said this earlier today, and the people who I met with earlier are going to realize I have a lot of things I say exactly the same way sometimes, so I'm sorry for repeating myself verbatim. When I was, during pandemic, I had this process where I would, like wake up, go to meditate, go to the gym, work on the book, 2 hours or 1,000 words. Then after that, I would eat for the first time of the day, and I regimented that so hardcore into my body that I would literally get to 950 words, and my mouth would start watering, like straight like that. So you see, I said that exactly before. You guys who saw me before, but it's just the truth. So when I'm really tapped in, I'm like that. But a lot of times it's more sporadic and all over the place, and like there's no rhyme or reason. That's how it is more right now when I'm like working and traveling a lot, mostly to travel. But when I'm locked in, I like to create a schedule that feels really like a true routine. I realize that is pretty helpful. Thanks. Great questions.
So I went to a social justice school.
Wait, where? I want to know where to put my. Okay, there you go. Hey.
How you doing? So I went to a social justice school in Harlem, and I've noticed a lot of social justice schools are now starting to pop up in the city or just all over, and they're now being implemented into the curriculum. Do you feel that they're necessary in helping young black men and women become proper activists and just more educated?
It's a great question, and I feel like I have to get more educated on them to like give like a proper answer. I think academia at large being concerned with social justice is super duper important. I think it's really necessary. I think the community at large being caring about social justice is important. I think, because I mean, social justice, like what even is it, right? To me, understanding that we're sort of siloed from each other in our sort of version of, we have our own house, our own thing, we have our whatever, but that's kind of an illusion. And we live in communities. Like your well-being is my well-being. We discovered that kind of firsthand through pandemic, or like more obviously through pandemic. That is always true. We live in a community, and so to me, social justice is sort of like understanding and reminding ourselves that we are our community, and instilling that at as early as possible, I think is really important and good. So I love the idea of it. I'm always scared and skeptical of how people are framing it and sort of changing it to something to fit their sanitizing things. Like you have the most hardcore conservative people who quote MLK without blinking an eye. And that's, so I'm always afraid of those kind of transformations when basically like the hegemonic power absorbs whatever's sort of on what is considered radical. And then it's really funny how like those bump against each other, because then supposedly super progressive spaces are like, actually, you know what, you're a little too radical for us. That's kind of another allusion to what I was talking about earlier today. But so I think it's great, but hopefully it stays like real, if that makes sense. Great question.
All right.
Yo.
So I've seen you earlier, you were talking about villains that are sympathetic or antagonists that are sympathetic. So what's better, a villain that you hate for being just a crazy person,
Yeah.
or a sympathetic villain?
For me, 100% the sympathetic one. I think there's a lot of, even the crazy one, it's like, what made them like that, Early on, I read a book called The Third Life of Grange Copeland, and it made me realize, like, one of my favorite things in, like, fiction is when I go from truly, like, hating a character to being like, wait, actually, I kind of love them. And then maybe back again. Like, I think that, to me, it reminds, because, again, what's the point of reading, right? Like, to me, it's such a reminder, because we're going to have people in our lives who give us difficulty. There's going to be people who are around us who we feel are not great. There's people who do us direct harm. And again, I'm interested in prisons and carceral states. But carcerality depends on us fully dismissing someone as less than. And to make someone crazy and just like irredeemable is maybe what you're talking about. It's almost like they would require the institution of the prison. And so to me, the prison is like itself like suggests that there are people who are 100% unredeemable, and I don't even believe that anyways. Maybe there are a couple people who just like are so interested in harm, and like right now it's hard for us to work within a community with them. But I think for the most part, if those people were given the resources they needed to survive and thrive, they wouldn't become sort of crazy, as you say. So to me, I always like a sympathetic villain, because really it's just a person. From their perspective, you're the villain. Or me, or whatever. Not you, you get it.
How did you go from writing just to like do it, like something that you do, to making it your career? And once it's your career, like, do you still like, did you still like it?
That's a really good question, for real. Um, if it's in my career, do I still like it? I'll remember that. But the first part, through like a lot of work and effort, I worked on it. I was an English major in school. I got a mentor who I did a like independent study with. We worked on the book, not on the book, on writing, and which was her just having me read Grace Paley, the stories like Bartleby the Scrivener. I read Baldwin for the first time. I read just a bunch of stuff, and she would just annotated. I didn't know what I was talking about. It's a woman named Lynn Tillman, great writer. And so what that helped me do was like I became a stronger reader. Becoming a really strong reader, a close reader is becoming a close reader, attaining some discipline which is connected to it, and like having some access to not fearlessness but some kind of courageousness is really like probably the most important parts of being a writer. But you really have to like grow that discipline. You really have to grow that close reading ability. For me, by doing that, I was able to get good enough that I could write stories that could grow in workshop, and then I did an MFA. I went to Syracuse MFA program that helped me sort of get better again. I had 3 years to really focus on writing, and then from there I queried an agent, and somehow I got the agent's like sort of the bridge between your work and like the publishing companies, and after I got my agent, we've been like kind of running since. There's more than that. There's a bunch of breakdowns and sadness and blah, blah, blah. But those are like the hard, things there. Do I still like it? It's changed a ton. I recently put out a song. I'm not trying to plug my, listen to my mixtape. But I put out a song on streaming recently because no one cares. And I have to remind myself what it is to make stuff and like do something creative that like no one like really gives a fuck about. Like that feels really important to me. I remember because my book came out in 2018, and let's say it came out October 2018, and I'll tell you what, like August of 2018, if I put out a story, it'd probably be me and 3 of my Facebook friends who were like, "Good job, Nana," So I know that wasn't a long time ago, and there's something really it's frustrating at the time, but if you're a writer, I know there's writers here. There's something really beautiful about that space because you don't get that back. Putting out a book and being lucky enough to be like well received is like a door you go through. You can't go back through it the other way. And sometimes I do kind of miss it because now if I write an essay, like I know there'll be a reader, and that I hope it's not shaping my steps, but it might be. And with the music, and I do some photography stuff, it feels so free because it's so outside of, basically capitalism hasn't like got its like hands on it at all. It has a little bit, but it kind of hasn't. And I'm not hoping to, I'm going to go win a Grammy. I'm just making it because I want to make it, and that feels really beautiful. And when you can, as much as you can stay in that space, at least psychically, like mentally, that's really important. So that's a really smart question.
I was wondering if you had any advice to writers about how to write a like sympathetic villain or a character that is more on the like darker side,
Yeah.
but without making it so that the reader is justifying their action.
Yeah, it's a really smart question. I remember one of my mentors and professors, a guy named George Saunders, I asked him the same question when he came to my college actually. I phrased it like, how are you able to be so like cruel, have so much cruelty in the characters but not be cruel to them or whatever? To me, it's just allowing yourself to truly. Okay, what I always say is like, someone else, maybe I didn't make this up, someone says like, let the monster have some lines. Like, what do they say? Very few people are just here like, I woke up, I want to cause destruction and havoc. I want to cause suffering. Usually, almost always, they feel pressed in to the point where they have to do something that's bad or wrong, or they've been taught, pardon me, that they have to do something that's destructive. And again, this is not to give those who administer harm like some free pass. There's accountability in life, but to me, the carceral state depends on us thinking like there's like this like certain like even though the phrase sociopath is like the sociopath who just woke up and decided to be evil. to me, a big part of it is just letting them speak. I have stories in my first book where it's there's a girl who just like does like everything terrible, but where it's from her point of view. A lot of times in my stories will be from the point of view of someone who's done something terrible. Allowing their consciousness to be a part of the story, even if you don't go from their point of view, just allowing us to see what their motivations are. Because almost always you'll find that it is not just to cause harm. And like my challenge for myself is like, I try to do this in real life with like really, 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 really like despicable people. Like, that's tough. I don't want to name any political entities, but like you can imagine who I'm imagining here. And I'm like, damn, like how did this person? Well, you've been rich your entire life. You've been told you're the best your entire life. You've been groomed to just view like this. Your father was low-key KKK member. If some people know that or not, if you know who I'm talking about, maybe you don't. All these different things, and you've created this construct. You don't know where some people like drink their own Kool-Aid. You don't even know where like the facade ends anymore. You're just totally subject to this thing. I'm not saying I forgive you for it, but it's like I can understand that, And so for me, I'm just really willing to listen to the character that's the so-called villain. But again, once I do that, they stop being a villain.
We have time for, we have time for just one more question, then we're going to begin to transition. So I'm going to hand this off for one more.
When did you start writing and what got you into it?
Great question. I started writing, I think the real answer is me and my friends, we almost like orally were keeping up this like almost like a manga type story for ourselves just for fun. I think it transitioned from that so I kind of talked about this before. I think there's something that happened for me where I had a lot of like my pleasures and joys were like very external to myself. And I think after the first time someone came like turned the lights off, I was like, oh, like they can just take whatever. And I think for me, I went from writing those stories orally with my friends to just doing them on my own on my dad's like yellow like notepads. He like those legal pads. And I think I learned to like view them as really sacred because like I can make it and no one can take it from me. And I didn't depend on something else. And it was free, which is a big part of it. So that probably happened I was like 14, and then it became like escapism thing. A lot of writers, I think, have that. I think I was probably 14, maybe even younger, like 13, 14-ish, where I'm like, okay, I'm writing this story on a piece of paper. And it was like the secret because I hadn't even really come to fully connected in my mind that writers were like real people, that writers were like human beings. I lived in the library. I had always read, but like, there was almost like I could see K.A. Applegate on a book, and it didn't translate to a human being like at all. It's funny enough, but I think some of that had to do with just I had never seen a writer in real life, all that stuff, But yeah, I started at that age, but I think what happened where it got really, really where I became a writer was where I was already kind of working on it at home and at school and college, and I came home and again things had like gotten worse again or whatever. And like physically and my mom's sick and all these things. And I think I remember coming home and seeing whatever I saw and then going to the Dunkin' Donuts and just like staying there for like 6 hours. And basically I had like locked in this almost like pathological habit of like life difficulty equals writing, even like in a way that doesn't make sense. And I think to me that's like when I became a writer because that became like my response to like a lot of like stimuli in my life. Like I said, therapy now that's not exactly how I do it anymore, but it's it's something I reached to like in the most important time. And I think once that became the case, it's like now I am a writer. To me, much more than like getting published or something. It's a great question. Thank you. Great question now, y'all. I appreciate it very much. Great questions.
Well, thank you so much, Nana.
Thank y'all.
Before everyone leaves, I just want to make a little announcement that, in recognition of all of your remarkable accomplishments in writing and social justice advocacy, St. Thomas Aquinas College is proud to announce a scholarship in your name, the Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah Scholarship for Social Justice.
Yeah.
This scholarship will help students in the School of Arts and Social Sciences fund a portion of their studies. The fund is targeted for first-generation college students majoring in or intending to major in a program within the School of Arts and Social Sciences who plan to use their degrees to impact social change. 2 scholarships will be awarded each year. One is reserved for a student who graduated from East Ramapo Central School District. Thank you, Nana,
It's
for all of your
incredible.
accomplishments, dedication to art, activism, the humanities, all of which, after reading Chain Gang All-Stars, I know comes from a place of love and compassion. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Don't make me cry now. That means a lot to me. Seriously, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And if you haven't picked up one of his books, please do so. They're there as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. And there is a little book signing.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be ready. In the back there.